Peace. This is Jamal Crawford talking to you today about a visit that I took to South Bay Jail, Suffolk County Jail, South Bay. Everyone knows right there in South Bay where you come off of the highway. Today is Monday, November 18th. I was invited there some months ago by current Sheriff Steve Tompkins. Steve Tompkins took the sheriff's position after the departure of Andrea Cabral, who was appointed to a higher office by Governor Deval Patrick, and Steve Tompkins, who was one of her staff and administrators, took over in her interim, and he's up for election in 2004, which will be the first time that he will be dealing with election. Since Sheriff Tompkins has taken over, and in full disclosure, I've known Sheriff Tompkins for a couple of years now. I knew of him before that, and I've known him to be an upfront brother from the community. We dealt around issues that had nothing to deal with law enforcement or public safety. I knew him actually through our efforts to organize on behalf of the Timothy School to help support that institution that's educating so many of our youth in the city, and we were part of a committee that was dealing with how to best support the Timothy. So I know Sheriff Steve Tompkins outside of his capacity as law enforcement and public safety and so on and so forth. Now, once again, since his time as sheriff, some scandals, media stories have arisen. One that we were alerted to via the Blackstonian was about people who were detained via immigration and ICE, detained via immigration status or what have you, and that were, while being detained at South Bay, were protesting some of the conditions there, and the words that went out in the media was that they were on a hunger strike, protesting the conditions. There were demonstrations on the outside and whatnot. Now, let me first of all say that this video is in no way, shape, or form a discussion of that particular scenario. I will touch on a couple of things that I have learned or from my visit, but once again, this is all one-sided. So I have not had the opportunity to interview those people who were initiating that protest or dealing with those conditions or were under the quote-unquote hunger strike. What I can say is that I've been alerted by Sheriff Tompkins and his staff at the Suffolk County House of Corrections, being South Bay, that the term hunger strike, and I think the media has confirmed this, that the term hunger strike may have been a little bit out of place. That at no time was there anyone who needed to be given medical attention, force-fed. If many of you have seen some of the stuff that happened on Guantanamo Bay and so on and so forth, we don't have a situation that rises to that level. But once again, without the opportunity to interview, talk to those people, I don't want to say that Jamal Crawford is saying, hey, there's no problem and all is clear. What I will focus on is, our visit from today. So the visit was initiated by Sheriff Steve Tompkins, who called me maybe a month and a half ago, and said, Jamal, I want you to come by and I want you to visit the facility. I know that you're a community activist and an organizer. I know that you deal with journalism and the media via the Blackstonian and whatnot, and being an outspoken community member who's worked on issues related around law enforcement, from police brutalities and the police killings of people in our community, to wrongful imprisonment, to mass incarceration in the prison industrial complex, that he wanted someone such as myself, who he knew and I think has a certain degree of trust for us. Not like we grew up together. It's not like, you know, we went to high school together. It's not like we hang out on the weekends or what have you. But he knows me through my community work. I know him, as I stated, through various different, you know, organizational efforts, and I've seen him. And at the end of the day, what I can say is I don't believe that Sheriff Tompkins is a bad guy. I don't believe that he is them, that he is the others, that he is the enemy. That is not my belief. Given his position in law enforcement and given my trepidation being through my activism, organizational, and my own political, revolutionary, black nationalist views and opinions, it would be very hard pressed for me to just give a carte blanche, you know, cosign to any member of law enforcement, despite any relationship. All I can talk about, once again, is what happened today. So let's get into that. As I said, invited about a month and a half ago. The whole thing has been in the process of being set up by his administrative staff and scheduled and so on and so forth. I attended today with one of my good friends and our state representative, Carlos Henriquez. So today it was myself and State Representative Carlos Henriquez who took, as it was described to us, took a tour of the South Bay facilities. We were met by various members of Suffolk County staff, specifically there at South Bay. We were met by some of the members of the communications team. We were met by the people who deal with external governmental relations. We were met by some of the people who deal with the actual day-to-day operations of Suffolk County. Everyone that I met today was completely professional, completely polite, completely pleasant, as would be expected on a tour. I didn't expect to come there and get mistreated in any way because, once again, we were invited there. We were guests. And so, of course, in this type of arrangement, most likely what you're going to see is, you know, the best foot forward of the institution or what have you. So we were given a tour of the facilities. We saw the housing units where quote-unquote general population people are held. We saw the ICE facility where those who are dealing with immigration issues are held. We saw the medical facility where people are taken for medical treatment. We saw the mental health facilities where people are engaged. I don't want to say that they're housed there because a lot of that happens on the medical facility, but then we went to the place where is the central office that deals with all the mental health issues that come into the facility. Those who are sent there due to problems, as well as people who request help and are sent there to get counseling and services, or those people who are marked or tagged that they may be in need of services, whether it's by officers, family members, a cellmate, or what have you, and say, hey, you know, I think that this person may need some help. So we went to all those facilities. We saw the outdoor facilities, recreation facilities, which also off to the side is now housing an urban gardening initiative where some of the people who are there at this time, and, you know, once again, too, we're not dealing with people who are bidding, you know, doing 10, 15-year sentences. This is not a state facility. This is not a federal facility. I'm uncomfortable almost even in the designation of, you know, inmates or this or that, because I think that may be too harsh. A lot of these people who are there, first of all, many of them haven't even been to court yet, so that they are still innocent until proven guilty. May be there because they could not pay the bail or what have you to be out of jail. There is a difference between jail and prison. Prison is where you go once you are sentenced to do your time, to do what the judge and the court has determined will be a punishment for your crime. Jail is more of a transitional holding facility, if you will. And while there are people who have been there for 2 and 3 years, generally you'll see that these are the people who are not serving higher sentences and whatnot. What we found out today, and some of which we already knew, there's about 1,100 people housed there. A little bit under 200, about 180 of those are women. There is about 150 of those who are in the immigration center, and that fluctuates. Obviously, this is just on the day that we went. That could, give or take 20 or 30 or what have you, as there are times of a high influx, and then there's other times. You're dealing with a population where almost half are dealing with some sort of mental health issue. You're dealing with a population, I didn't get the statistic on this, but where you have a high amount of people who are dealing with substance abuse. You're dealing with a high population there of people who have children and are returning at some point to society and coming from these homes. You're dealing with a lot of people who are dealing with all the issues that are prevalent in the community, domestic violence, so on and so forth. What I saw there, and this is once again the crux of what I'm going to be talking about, what I saw. First of all, the fact that I was invited. Let's start there. I have been concerned about, issues that are going on in prisons and jails in our state and across the country for some time. It's the first time I've ever been invited by anybody to go to any law enforcement facility. Well, no, that's not true. I've been invited to go places before, but usually that's been by warrant or subpoena. This is the first civil invitation I've received from particularly a sheriff. That man who was at the head of that, not an administrator, not a teacher who's doing tutoring on the side there or GED. This is an invitation from the head man to a community activist who is seen as a controversial figure to many. Certainly one who has a track record of dealing once again with law enforcement, dealing with wrongful imprisonment and incarceration, dealing with police brutality and so on and so forth. So in many quarters I'm not seen as a friend to law enforcement. To many of those people I'm seen as a problem, and also too having my own criminal record. Being a convicted felon myself, there are many who would say, this guy is also closer to the problem than he is the solution. I would disagree with that and have a track record to make that case for that. But I think that just the invitation alone is, to be noted. And what it speaks to is a level of openness and a level of transparency that I haven't really seen before. So just for that alone, I would like to say that I think that marks something that is different. That marks a different type of approach. And back to the whole us, they, them, the others, the enemy. I don't believe that Steve Tompkins is an enemy to our people. Now, what does that say? That says that in his office, being a law enforcement officer, being the sheriff of Suffolk County Sheriff of all the Suffolk County institutions, particularly obviously South Bay and all the other ones under that jurisdiction, Nashua, so on and so forth, that he has a job to do. And jail is not supposed to be fun. Jail is not supposed to be a place that young black men want to grow up one day and go to. There is no badge of honor to be gotten there. There is no rite of passage to be gotten there, and it is not something that we should promote or glorify to our people as if there is anything there other than what it is. This is a place that has been set up by the system and the government to hold people while they're waiting for trial, to punish people who have broken the laws and been found guilty of crimes. Once again, many people who are there have not been found guilty, but they are still subject to that same loss of rights when you are not able to pay your bond or your bail or what have you, and you have to wait the trial or the court date out. So once again, just Steve Tompkins' invitation there, I think, is big. What I saw while I was there and the information that I was made privy to in terms of programming, I think is very interesting and once again worthy of note. Now, without any kind of tangible, measurable outcomes, we do not know how effective that is. I do know that there is a GED program, for instance, but we do not know how many people who participated in that GED program then later on went to receive their GEDs. And certainly we don't know those who may have gotten their GED there, who have then gone on to pursue higher education or continuing education or so on and so forth. But I saw GED programs that were in place. I saw mental health counseling that was in place. I saw legal representation that was in place. And once again, too, to talk to the staff there, the people who I met today, these people, it was clear that they were dedicated. It was clear that they were concerned, engaged, passionate, so on and so forth. But also, too, I know that they are going through budgetary constraints. There is no $1 million budget for a lot of this stuff. I know that they're going through staffing restraints. There is no 100 people who are able to work on particular cases. So, for instance, the legal representation that I met there, the person who is on site at South Bay who handles legal communication, if you will, maybe a legal liaison that helps young men there. He's not their lawyer, but he helps bridge the gap between inmates, lawyers, in-house legal problems that they may be having, so on and so forth. That person is one person who has a couple of paralegals on his staff as well that help. But with a caseload of a couple hundred men, you can imagine that that gets overwhelming. He seems to be doing fine, is in great spirits, is very passionate, but we can say that we probably think that there should be more resources, more personnel dedicated to those. And I don't know if that's something that comes under Suffolk County particularly, or if that is, you know, statewide or what have you. But once again, the people and the staff that I saw there were great in the Career Training Institute, which is called CGI, and where they're teaching young men and women who may be there, but carpentry, teaching them via the urban gardening. So if you're doing carpentry, you possibly could be building a greenhouse, as I saw the frame out today for the greenhouse that they're building that will then, you know, work with the urban gardening project. And teaching young men trades. Those who do not have a GED are encouraged to get it and steered in the right programs where they can get their GED, whether it's getting your driver's license back, whether it's getting turned on to unions, whether it's getting your OSHA card. These are the type of things that I saw today myself. Getting your birth certificate, so on and so forth. All the things that you need to either re-enter society as a productive member of society in the community, or if you kind of already were out there, but you know, you got caught up and you know, you're generally good in these areas, but you don't have a copy of your birth certificate, or your license is messed up, or you know, you're good in these other areas, but you never got your GED, that there are these programs in place. We saw also too in the same career type of center, CGI, where young men are learning graphic design and printing of particular interest to a person like me that's in that field. They print 95% of their own materials out of South Bay is printed by inmates in South Bay who are learning these trades. So brochures, pamphlets that I came home with today, these are all printed in-house. In terms of the facilities itself, the facilities that I saw were well kept. Some were in a little bit of stages of construction because they're redoing the HVAC, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. They're redoing the HVAC. They were redoing some of the HVAC along the area where we went to see the urban gardening project. So some of this stuff is in flux. Everything that we saw was not completed or done, but you can see that progress is being made, work is being done. I know that earlier in the first leg of our tour, we passed a room where gentlemen were up in the ceilings, you know, doing what they needed to do with the ventilation system. And later at the end of our tour, when we went to go speak to some brothers who were in there, you know, they were already out of that room, meaning that that room had been completed for that day. So you actually got to see work in progress. The conditions of the facility that I saw, for the most part, were not for the most part. I mean, I didn't see anything that was in disarray. Everything was clean. Floors were shiny and buffed. There were areas that you can imagine where, you know, there were cracks in the concrete outside in the yard, or paint on the walls that, could stand a little spruce up or what have you. But as we also confirmed today, the facility was built or opened in, was it 91 or 92, either or 91 or 92. So you're dealing with a facility that's now, over 20 years old. And there are issues there. It's, obviously been well used, unfortunately. Thousands of people have gone throughout there over the years. And I think that overall, if I had to give it a grade, I would have to give it a B+ on cleanliness. Once again, as I said, you're talking to a convicted felon. So I've been at institutions. I was locked up in DeKalb County Jail in Atlanta, Georgia, and the conditions there were not as nice. The staff that I had to interact with were not as nice. Now, once again, disclaimer. Obviously, going there as a visitor, as the guest of the sheriff, who was in fact the boss, I didn't expect to get mistreated by correction officers. I didn't expect to get mistreated or disregarded by staff today. So by no means is this just a blanket statement saying everything is rosy. We do not know, and we are actually in talks with Sheriff Steve Tompkins, who has been open to it, for us to kind of try to begin to do investigation and research into what may be the problems at the institution. I think I have a greater sense now of what is going right at the institution in terms of administration, in terms of programmatically, in terms of vision for the future, and efforts to combat recidivism, in efforts to actually do some of what they call corrections, so that when people come in, they are actually able to leave better than they come in. A lot of that obviously depends on the individual. But I left there with an overall, I won't say a good feeling. Maybe good is too strong of a word. I left there with a level of confidence that Sheriff Steve Tompkins is concerned with our community, our people, improving it in recognition of the fact that everybody who is housed in there, no one in there is doing a life bid. All of these people are going to come back out at some point to the community. We want to make sure and minimize, and when I say we, I'm speaking for myself, State Rep Carlos Henriquez, all the other community activists and organizers that I've worked with for years in this regard. We want to make sure that people who come out do not return. We want to make sure that people who have not yet been never go. And I believe that with Sheriff Steve Tompkins, we have a partner in that effort, a person who is willing to be open and listen to ideas, willing to initiate new programs that may have an impact on it, and has supported current programs that are there that we know are working. And now it's time for us as a community to, this is one critique I will give. A lot of people don't know what's going on there, and you can't get involved if you don't know. The sheriff has told me that their institution is open to anybody, so I encourage any community activist, organizer, anybody who has a nonprofit program that trains people, job readiness, new skills, technology, green tech, so on and so forth, urban farming or gardening, so on and so forth. Call down to South Bay, ask for a meeting. The proof is in the pudding. All I can say is what my experience was. Call down there. Nothing beats a fail but a try. Call down there and see. What I experienced today was complete openness, transparency. I'm satisfied with this initial visit, but we will not be satisfied with only that initial visit. And I have the word of the sheriff that this is, not the end. This is the beginning. So plan on going back to South Bay in many different capacities, and hope to visit the other facility under the jurisdiction of Suffolk County as well. And I hope to also bring other people from organizations, activists, and so on and so forth into the fold to provide tangible resources and services that will be of use to the people who are there while they're there, but ultimately in service of our community. Because the people who are now in the population of South Bay, the better we make them, the better we make our entire community. These people are not out of a petri dish. These people did not land from the planet Tecton or something. They come right here from our communities. Most people in that facility live within a 5-mile radius of that facility, which are obviously Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan, South End. Most people can see their home from the windows there, or their neighborhood. And strengthening that facility, strengthening the people who are there in population, providing them with options, skills, and whatnot, only strengthens our communities. These people do not live in a bubble. These people have mothers and fathers and aunts and grandmothers and children in most cases. And so it really behooves us as a community now to explore this opportunity that, in my belief, under Sheriff Cabral was also open in this regard and did a lot of work in setting up the foundation. But as I've said, this is the first invite I've gotten. So the fact that we have that level of openness, I think, is something that is only to our benefit as a community as a whole, and should be seized upon, should be taken advantage of. So basically, that's what I saw on the tour. I'm trying to think of anything else that may have stuck out to me. We did get to speak to a couple of brothers there. I'm not going to mention their names, obviously, for anonymity. But we spoke to a couple brothers there. The brothers were happy that there were programs available, but they felt as though that there needs to be more, and I think that's something that we all agree with. More that has to happen once you leave those doors. So it's one thing while you're dealing with, quote-unquote, a captive audience and getting those services there. But once that person is now released into the larger society, then, then what happens? And are these things followed up on? So we need some more, I think the term is wraparound services, and services that follow you. And also to services for the families that they're coming back to, or the woman that they're in a relationship with, or the children that they may have, who may be in their household, may be in a grandparent's household, may be in state custody. So there's a lot of different variables and elements that we want to look on. We all need to have all hands on deck and follow this. I will say this as a personal plea. Anybody out there, if you're doing something that's positive for our community, I challenge you and I implore you to call Suffolk County, call Sheriff Steve Tompkins' office at South Bay, see what you could add on, see if he's open for you to take a tour or add on, find out what programs are there, how you can volunteer. All elected officials of color. All elected officials of color. You need to go down there with your colleague, who is also an elected official, even though he was appointed in the interim. He has not dealt with his first election, but he is still your colleague, and in fact is currently sitting in a seat that is one of the largest constituencies, being Suffolk County. This is not bound by a district or a state representative district. This is an entire county, Suffolk County being one of the most highly populated counties in the Commonwealth. So I think that it behooves us to take any opportunity to get further information about that facility. I will be issuing a report via Blackstonian with a little bit more data, facts, and figures. Give me, a couple of days to a week to compile the information and output it in some sort of format that will be helpful and beneficial to give you greater insight, give me a chance to coordinate with the sheriff's office, who will be providing me with other information so I can, give a full report. And we're going back. Suffolk County Jail visit today, November 18th, was very eye-opening. And unfortunately, I've been to facilities like this before, but on the other side of the fence, never as a visitor. And so it was very illuminating, and I'm glad that I did it, because I was a little bit hesitant there at first. I didn't know if it was a trap. I was hesitant at first, but I'm glad I did it, and I encourage you, if you have the ability and the capacity and something to add on, I encourage you to do it yourself. All the community media folks from Boston Voice, I encourage you to go there. Touch 106.1 FM, I encourage you to go there. Boston Banner, I encourage you to go there. Elected officials, Councilor Tito Jackson, City Councilor Ayanna Presley, City Councilor Felix Arroyo, who is now in the tail end of his term, other people from the new mayoral-elect transition team, John Barrow, Charlotte Golar-Ritchie, Marty Walsh, mayoral-elect, currently state rep himself. You should all go there. Gloria Fox, Byron Rushing, Russell Holmes. As I said, I was there with Carlos today. Linda Dorsina Fori, our new senator. Senator Sonia Chang Diaz. And even some of the other officials who don't represent Boston proper. Marco Devers. Oh, let me not forget Jeffrey Sanchez, state representative, who does represent an area there. Liz Malia as well. But even Representative Ben Swan from Springfield and Cheryl Coakley Rivera, state rep. I encourage you all to take this tour because I know we're dealing with all the same problems and the same issues, whether it's Boston or Western Mass, or even if we're out of the state, from Boston to Compton, as I'm fond of saying, we'll find that a lot of these issues are the same. So all hands on deck. That's pretty much my experience today. I'll have more on it later, but I just wanted to give you kind of an overall summary. Thank you, and once again, I would like to thank Sheriff Steve Tompkins personally, because you did not have to do that. And if you would have asked some other people, I'm sure they would have told you, do not do that. But you did it anyway. I thank you for the invite. I thank all the staff that I was able to meet today from the various departments. Thank you for all your courtesy and professionalism. I appreciate it. Today is Monday, November 18th. Peace.